Quick 1 minute guitar lesson. We're going to talk about using the G string, bending on the G string for your blues. That's what we most often start with. Bend up, let it come back down, then continue down. But there's a few other ways that you can mix it up. You can bend up, kill that bend at the top using your picking hand, releasing the note with your fretting hand, then playing it straight and continuing down. That's the technique used in that famous Albert King lick. Another thing that we can do, slide into the note. Okay? And lastly, slide up and back. That one takes a little bit of getting used to. So, just to review, let's way 1, way 2, way 3, way 4. Have fun with it. Quick 1 minute blues guitar lesson. So, most of us know box 1, basically the minor pentatonic scale. But there's a major pentatonic that intersects with box 1, which is the minor pentatonic. And a guy that I like, Guitar Slim, used to mix those two together by, instead of using these notes at the top of box 1, he would use these notes of the major pentatonic and so he would play major pentatonic licks right there. And what I like to do is take something like that and then pair it with something minor pentatonic after it. So that's the essence of mixing major and minor together, is understanding that in the middle of the minor pentatonic box 1, you've got some major right there that you can mix right in with it. Quick 1 minute blues guitar lesson. At the end of a 12-bar progression, you're used to going up to the 5 chord for the bar 9, then down to the 4, then down to the 1. An alternative that you can use when you're writing your own songs or just jamming is, instead of going 5, 4, 1, 1, is to go 2, 5, and then 1, 1. Throw whatever turnaround you want in there. So when you do it in kind of a ballad situation, gives you a nice little option so you don't always have to play the end of the progression the same way. Quick 1 minute blues guitar lesson. When you're playing in box 1, it can start to sound overwhelmingly minor if you pay too much attention to the notes that we all know in box 1. Thankfully, there's a little trick you can use. First, you just take this note on the D string, slide it back 1 fret, and walk up on that note instead of, because we're using a major pentatonic note in the middle there. Now, to add on to that, you can hammer onto the major 3rd here on the G string. Instead of this note or this note, hammer onto the one in the middle. Then continue up. Hit this note, 1 note back from where we usually hit. And then you can come back down on the minor notes, resolve it right there. I like to throw in the octave there just to resolve it nicely over the 1. Quick 1 minute blues guitar lesson. One of the telltale signs that somebody's not spent a whole lot of time listening or studying blues is when their blues shuffles all sound like this. There's a couple different ways you can play it so that they don't all sound the same. The first one, the most reserved, is a muted shuffle. Your picking hand to rest against the bridge here. You're allowing them to ring out a little bit. That one doesn't have a lot of top end to it, so it's nice to play behind a singer. The next one is more of a staccato feel. A little bit tough because you want that initial note to ring out loud, but you want to keep the muting under control after that. The last one is a nice wide open ringing sound. All three of those have their own place. They each have a different sound, and if you get good at playing all of them, you can adapt it to whatever context you're in so you won't sound the same on every shuffle. 1 minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about sliding nines. I know you've heard of them before. Whenever you're in, let's say, the key of A, just find the D and the B string, slide those two notes together and back. Do that over the 1, over the 4, just move it down 1 string. E and the G string, and then up 2 frets over the 5. Now you don't want to play it the same way all the time, so it's good to have options. Playing it as a double stop and sliding them together is your first way. Second way, slide up on the bottom string, add in the top string, slide down together. Third way, slide up on the bottom string, and then all the way down. And my personal favorite, where you slide up, down, and then back and forth a couple times. Go ahead and use it. Quick 1 minute blues guitar lesson, one of my favorite melodies to end a blues song with. What you're going to do is you're going to start here at the root of the key. In this case, I'm in A. We're playing over this major pentatonic pattern. Right when we get to here, we're going to drop to the root of the 4 chord here on the A string. Then we're going to kind of visually transpose that pattern and play it starting on the root of the 4. But then we're going to interrupt ourselves again, jump up to the G string, get the minor third there, mix in a couple other notes, a little bend. Then you can throw your 9th chord there to end it. Now you can also play this on the higher string. Same thing, just an octave up. Quick 1 minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about Freddie King. One of the great things that he did is he would be playing in box 1. He would switch between major and minor. Let's talk about how he did it. So first of all, when you're playing in box 1 here, there's a pattern that connects from behind box 1 up through box 1 and into box 2. It's a minor pentatonic kind of diagonal pattern. Now we've already talked about some of those major notes that happen in box 1, and all Freddie King would do is walk down on the minor pattern till he gets to the A string. Then he would touch the note on the bottom E, work his way back up on that pattern, but when he got to the G string, he would roll to the major third and end with some vibrato. Quick 1 minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about Albert King and B.B. King playing in box 2. That's an Albert King sound, but he would actually mix some major in there. This note right in the middle actually adds some major sound to your box 2 licks, and while he didn't often land on it directly, he would add that little bend in there to effectively play this note. Now B.B. King, on the other hand, he would drop one note outside of box 2 on the major pentatonic scale. Then he would jump up here, bend it major, and down again. So, versus. Quick 1 minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about B.B. King mixing major and minor. We're in the key of A. So we slide into box 3 to get that B.B. sound. And as long as we stick to that note, it all sounds happy. There's a major pentatonic pattern here. Okay? But if we want to add in some minor, there's a minor pattern right here. So when we're bending up, or just bending to that note, it's just going to sound major. But if we go a little bit further to that note, it adds just a touch of minor to our sound. Start major, add in some minor, then end with a little major bend. Just like that. Quick 1-minute blues guitar lesson, one of the sounds that you're familiar with if you like Stevie Ray Vaughan. He would work that sound into a lot of the things that he played. You can certainly do it down here in box 1, but you can also do it in box 4. So if you find your way to box 4, just go like this. Okay? Because right here, that echoes same thing we played in box 1 down here. So you can play some of those fast circular Stevie Ray Vaughan licks up in box 4 for a higher sound. 1-minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about sliding 9s versus sliding 6ths. So in one of my previous lessons, I described these as sliding 9s. A couple people pointed out, well, that's actually a 6th. Well, the reason I didn't call them sliding 6s or sliding 6ths is because in blues, when we talk about sliding 6ths, we're usually talking about this happy sounding thing that you can do over the 1, the 4, or the 5. Well, I called them sliding 9s because what I was leaving out was this note right here, which turns it into a sliding 9th chord. So if you just take what I said before, with just those 2 notes, and add in this one, you got sliding 9th chords, and then up here, just add a note at the same fret. Okay, and then over the 5. So even though the interval that I was showing was not a 9th, it's based on the 9th chord that is played at that position. There you go. 1-minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about Jimi Hendrix. Those bends where he would bend up and they would have this weird sick sound. That's created by, let's say we're in box 1 in the key of B. So you bend up on this note on the B string to the root, and as you're doing it, you're bending the G string along with it. And then you're switching to the G string that's already pre-bent and letting it come back down. Now, if you could do it perfectly, it wouldn't sound so kind of sickly and weird, but if you're off by even a little bit, it kind of has this weird sound to it, which is kind of what makes it beautiful. 1-minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about Freddie King. When he was playing in box 2, he would do a lot of things really fast and repetitively in that position. Let's start with a basic one. If it's a little too hard to pick every note, just start with. But you want to start adding those picking strokes in there. You want to make sure you're hitting the bend at the right note. And you want to push past what's comfortable because you want to kind of expand how fast you can play this so that you're more comfortable playing it as a reasonable speed when you're performing. 1-minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about B.B. King in the key of C. So sometimes he would do this chromatic walk-up thing, and a lot of times our licks are designed to hit notes of the minor pentatonic scale, but he would blend them sometimes. Find the root note here, walk up 3 frets in a row, backtrack 1, walk up 3 again, and land right here. So his style involved a lot of walking down through box 1 and then walking back up. So you can piggyback this with what I showed a couple lessons ago. And that whole thing just has B.B. King style written all over it. So when you're playing in box 1, you want to sound like B.B. King. Don't always just use the minor pentatonic to go back up. experiment with different timings and hit those chromatic notes, and you'll have a little B.B. King in your sound. 1 minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about Freddie King again. I previously talked about his really fast repeating licks in box 2, but there's something he would do sometimes to get out of that pattern. And so on his final repetition, when he got to this note, instead of continuing down, he would jump up, then straight down. Okay. So that's a good lick that you can use all by itself, but it also serves as a good ending for just like that. 1 minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about this sound. You hear that in rock and roll, sometimes in rockabilly, maybe even in country. I don't know because I don't listen to it. But what we're doing here is if you get in box 1, find this note on the B string up here. One way to do it is to bend on the B string to this note. You want to kill that bend at the top though. The other way to do it is to slide to it. You might think, why don't you just go? Well, because that sounds ridiculous. Here you get a little texture. A lot of the rock and roll sounds are just based off of hitting the same note, just getting to it in 2 different ways on 2 different strings. 1 minute blues. Let's talk about Stevie Ray Vaughan. In the song Texas Flood, key of F sharp or G flat. What's the most important part of that lick? Most of you would probably gravitate towards the, because that's the most technically difficult part of that lick. But I would argue that that note right there is the most important, because at the point that he plays it, the progression is going to the 5 chord or it's over the 5 chord. When he plays that lick and he ends it right here, he's tying that lick into the part of the progression that they are over, which is the 5 chord. So with Stevie Ray, as with any great guitarist, it's important to look at where they're ending the licks, not just the notes that they play. 1 minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about B.B. King when you're playing in box 1 and you're walking down. Everybody does that kind of stuff, but there's one thing that you can change up to give it a little bit more B.B. King flavor. When you get down to the G string, jump back up to the B string and then continue down. See how that sounds different? So that sound right there is pretty signature B.B. King, but it's a little bit harder to do than what we normally do because you got to go back and forth. So here's the trick to getting it right. You want to hammer onto this note right here with your middle finger, then pick the note on the B string, then get the note on the G string. If you can pick all of them, that's great. But if you can get that hammer on the G string, it makes things a lot easier. 1 minute blues, let's talk about that Stevie Ray Vaughan swagger on a lick like this. The key to getting his sound on that is in the upstroke here. So here's that same lick with a quick upstroke. The rhythm of that is, okay, but it's missing a little something. Here's that lick again with a little Stevie Ray Vaughan swagger. The difference there is I took my time on the upstroke, so we end up with a rhythm like this. Okay, so put that in a larger context. You can see how it adds a little something compared to doing it without. 1 minute blues guitar lesson. Let's talk about Freddie King and the song Hideaway. One of the reasons that sounds so happy is because he's using major pentatonic notes. Instead of Instead of typical minor pentatonic, he's using major pentatonic scale notes mixed in. And then sometimes he would mix minor in with that. And then hammering onto the major third there with his index finger. Okay, so even in the open position, you can use those major pentatonic notes to mix major and minor like Freddie King did in Hideaway. 1 Minute Blues, let's talk about an E-form chord and one of the crucial embellishments that you need to know. Sounds like a lot's going on. It's actually very simple. You're just taking the top 2 notes of the chord, barring those. In this case, I'm at the 5th fret for a key of A. Hammering on 2 frets up on the B string, then playing it straight, then coming down, barring 2 frets up on the D, G, and B strings. Then going down here as if I'm playing a minor chord, but then I'm hammering on here on the major third. And then coming down to the root. You'll hear that all over the place, and that's how it's done. 1 Minute Blues, let's talk about Eric Clapton. If I could only teach you one lick to sound like Clapton, it would be that one right there. Just find box 1 in the key of A, standard tuning. That's our pattern. Next place you can find it, just go up to the place where we normally play our B.B. King licks. Move this note and this one up a half step. Same pattern. Next up in box 4. Three different places you can play the same lick, sound like Clapton. 1 Minute Blues, let's talk about Stevie Ray Vaughan. When he was playing in box 1, I'm in the key of F sharp or G flat. There are 4 distinct licks that you need to know that you can chain together to do that kind of stuff. The first one starts on the B string and you just go like this. That's it. Number 2, the third one, and the fourth one, if you just put those together in different orders, you can create much longer sequences. 1 Minute Blues, let's talk about blues walk-up notes. This is just a general thing that you can use in almost any blues song. Let's say you're in the key of A, and you're going from the 1 to the 4 chord. You can use these notes to kind of lead into it. Okay? Slide chord, single notes. Just start 3 frets back from where the root of the 4 chord is. Hit every note in between. Or start 1 fret up from that and just delay that first note a little bit. When you're at bar number 9, you're going to the 5 chord. Do the same thing into the root of the 5 chord. Now when you're coming back down, going from the 5 to the 4 is easy. You're just hitting that note in between. But when you're going from the 4 to the 1, that sounds a little too happy. That sounds not quite right. So a lot of times what you'll hear, you'll just drop down to 2 frets below the 1 and then walk up into that.